Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I want to say thanks to the organizers of this conference who has invited me as a invited speaker or as a resource person for this conference. The title of my presentation is the charge carrier dynamics in the bulk heterojunction organic solar cells. And here the picture explains that this is the active layer of organic solar cell, which is a sandwich in between the anode and cathode. And when we zoom this active layer, we have seen there are different phase, like acceptor phase, a donor phase, and there is a mixed phase also. And these all small things are representing the activities. Suppose there is a generation of exciton, there is a recombination of exciton, and finally there is a dissociation of exciton. When it dissociate, there is a movement of the charge carrier, the separated charge carriers towards the respective electrodes. So this is an overview of the charge carrier dynamics inside the bulk heterojunction solar cell. And in our coming slides, we will learn about these things. This is the outline of my presentation. I have divided my presentation into few slides. In the starting, I will discuss about the solar cell, different generation of the solar cell, and then we will pick organic solar cell, which is in discussion in this presentation. We will learn about the importance, why the organic solar cell are important, and working principle of this organic solar cell, and then how we can fabricate these organic solar cells in our lab, and then how we can understand the charge carrier dynamics in the bulk heterojunction organic solar cell with the help of IP characteristics. And finally, I conclude my all the work, which I am going to present in these coming slides. So these are the different technologies of the organic solar cell. When we're talking about the technologies, it means the different materials. The first generation is related to the silicon solar cell and polycrystalline silicon solar cell. Now in the present days, more than 85% of the market or solar market is covered by the silicon solar cell, crystalline silicon solar cells. Because the efficiency of this crystalline solar cells is very high and the lifetime is also very high, but the cost and some other parameters which influence the disadvantages of these generations. And in order to overcome these disadvantages, another generations came into the existence. The second generation is called considered with the amorphous silicon, cadmium telluride, CIGS, copper indium gallium diselenide solar cells, and the third generation, which is the emerging photovoltaic generation. That in that there is a dye-synthesized solar cell. Here there is a picture of the Professor Grazel, who is the Michael Grazel, who is the father of this dye-synthesized solar cell, then organic solar cells. Here is the Professor Alan J. Heger, who has contributed a lot in the establishment of this organic solar cell technology. This is the perovskite solar cell. This is Professor Hannes Snaith, who has reported first time the highest efficiency in the perovskite solar cell than the quantum dot solar cell. So these are the different technologies of the solar cells, but we will mainly focus on the organic solar cell, and we will learn that why these organic solar cells are important technologies among these all. So this is the brief history of the organic solar cells. The first organic solar cells fabricated with a single layer, which is sandwiched in between the ITO and the aluminum electrode. But the disadvantage of this solar cell is the efficiency is very low because the diffusion length inside the organic material is very low. It is nearly about 10 to 15 nanometer. And if they didn't find any interface, they go for a recombination. Then another structure come into existence in which they have coated the electron donor and electron acceptors. And this first cell is fabricated, double layer fabricated by CW Tang. They have achieved the efficiency near about 1%. They have used these materials, but the cell problem is the same. Then the third champion structure come into existence, that is called bulk heterojunction solar cell, in which they have make a blend of a donor material and acceptor material in a single solvent, and they have sandwiched this in between the two electrodes. And at that time, they have achieved a very good efficiency, near about 3% with the very low power, like 20 milliwatt. Normally, we measure all the characterization at 100 milliwatt, but this will give near about 2.9% at 20 milliwatt. But right now, when we see these structure, the devices which are based on these structure have achieved a very good efficiency nowadays. Their efficiency is closing to the 16%. Here you can see the trend in the 2000 years efficiency was low, but right now it's crossed the 16% landmark. You see these the black dots. These are represent the devices based on the PCBM, P7dB1, PC7dB1 BM, and these blue one represent the non-fullerene acceptors, and these are the polymers who have established a landmark in achieving the highest efficiencies. Further, we can see the best efficiency chart. This chart is given by the NREL. NREL is a National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Colorado, USA. They certify the efficiency of this solar cell, and when we focus on this emerging photovoltaic technology, here the red color circle, filled circle shows the organic solar cell, and when we see that circle here, it shows the efficiency of 7.4. So people are trying to increase its efficiency. Sideways, they are also thinking about its stability to commercialize this organic solar cell in the market. So why the bulk heterojunction organic solar cell are important? Because these organic solar cell have ultra low manufacturing cost when we compare with the other photovoltaic technology like a silicon photovoltaic technology. The manufacturing cost is very low. We can fabricate these solar cell in the low temperature. These solar cells are the lightweight, less than one kilogram per meter square, and we can change the color of these solar cells because these are dependent upon the material, and we can tune the band gap or the light emission of the materials by changing its HOMO levels. We can deposit on any surface. We can apply these on the mobile devices also. These are the environmental friendly. The organic solar cells are environmental friendly. These are thin, ultra thin, like less than 1 millimeter, and they are flexible. We can fabricate on the flexible substrates also. So because of these advantages, the bulk heterojunction shows their potential to potential for the commercialization of these organic solar cells. Now, this is this is the structure of the organic solar cell. As I explained in my first slide, this is the active layer, which is a blend of donor and acceptor. Here, the donor is a polymer and acceptor is a PCBM. It is a sandwich in between the ITO and the metal electrode. And sometimes we use some additional layers like P.PSS as a whole transport layer, or molybdenum oxide as a whole transport layer, or zinc oxide as an electron transport layer in order to improve the charge collection efficiencies. And when we zoom this active layer, we have seen here when the light is incident, when we take a zoom view, this is the donor, this is the acceptor phase, and when we incident a light, exciton is generated, the exciton diffuse towards the interface where they dissociate, and they collected on the respective electrodes. So when the light is incident, the thing happen is that there is a generation of exciton. Sometimes the exciton recombine itself, that is called a junctionate recombination. But when they successfully diffuse towards the interface, where they dissociate and converted into the separated charge carriers, and the charge they are moved towards the respective electrodes. Here we see that after the dissociation, they are moving towards the respective electrodes. So in our charge carrier dynamic study, we will main focus on the exciton generation, how we calculate the maximum exciton generation, and then we will discuss about the exciton dissociation, and then we will calculate the charge collection efficiencies. How we can calculate the charge collection and exciton dissociation, we will learn in our coming slides. So this is a fabrication process. How we can fabricate? First, we need ITO coated glass. We can develop a pattern on this ITO with the help of either by laser scriber or by etching. So here we need 2 strips. We will develop 2 strips, and with the help of spin coater. This is a spin coater. We will see a zoom view of this, and we have placed this ITO glass on here, ITO coated glass on here, and this is a controller. With controller, we can control the speed, rotation speed, and the time of rotation. And from this, we can control the thickness of the layers which we are going to deposit by using a spin coating method. And then we can spin coat. We drop cast over material on this, and we place on the chunk. And then we will plot a whole transport layer and then active layer. And active layers are looking like this. After the spin coating, these layers are looking like this. And then we can develop a top electrode, that is a metal electrode. The metal electrode is deposited with the help of thermal evaporator system. And then finally, these cross sections act as your solar cell device. And we call these as a pixels. And here we get 4 pixels. And then from these pixels, we can calculate over current density voltage characterization, characteristics curves. we shine a light, we will get our IV characteristics. So when we sum up, we need, for the fabrication of devices, we need a donor material, acceptor material, electron transport material, hole transport material, ITO glass on which we are going to fabricate our device, and then top electrode material. So first step we go for the substrate patterning with the help of either a laser scriber or with the help of etching. Then we will go for a cleaning. First is a soap cleaning, then chemical cleaning. After that, we will go for a UV ozone cleaning. This cleaning is basically UV ozone cleaning is required to remove the organic impurities from the substrate and increase the wettability of the IQ substrate. Then we will prepare our solution with the help of spin coater. We can spin cast our active layer or different layer on the ITO substrate. Then we need a thermal evaporator system for the metal evaporation, and finally we can encapsulate our device for the characterization. And then we go for a characterization. You see this red line is the characteristics under the dark, and this black line shows the characteristics under the illumination of the light with the intensity of 100 milliwatt per centimeter square with EM 1.5 G. This is the standard procedure for the illumination, and from this IV curves we can calculate the value of VOC, we can calculate the value of GSC, JM, VM, and maximum power. And with the help of this value, we can calculate the fill factor. The fill factor represents how much power delivered to the load, and we can also calculate the value of efficiencies with the help of these values like GSC and VOC. And then this is the setup, present setup. We can measure the photovoltaic performance in the presence of sunlight. And these fill factor, efficiency, GSC, VOC are called the photovoltaic performance parameters. Now, these are the instruments which we are using for measuring the efficiency, which we are using for the fabrication of the device. So sometimes if we want to make a highly efficient devices, we are using the glow box, because in the glow box there is a nitrogen atmosphere. And suppose if we fabricate our device in the open air during the fabrication or during the spin coating, your device, the oxygen comes into your device and start to degrade during the fabrication. So when you fabricate device, sometimes you get nothing because your device degrade completely. So we are fabricating devices inside the glow box, complete fabrication, and there is also inbuilt a thermal evaporator system inside of it. Here also there is a thermal evaporator inside it, and these are computerized controlled thermal evaporator system. And suppose if you want to fabricate your device outside after the spin coating, you can use this type of thermal evaporator system for the metal electrode deposition. And further you go for IV measurement using a solar simulator. This setup is like a laser scriber. This is measuring the photoluminescence intensity or photoluminescence characterization of your layers. This is the UV absorption measurement, and this is the EQ setups. So these systems which we are required for the fabrication of our devices. Now, in order to understand the charge carrier dynamics, first we can study our JB characteristics in the dark. And from these JB characteristics, how we can calculate the trap density, how we can calculate the mobility, we will learn from here. In order to investigate these things, we are need to fabricate a single carrier device. When we call a single carrier device, it means we can study the flow of the charge carrier either through a HOMO level or either through a LUMO level. If we study the flow through the HOMO level, it means that these devices are hole-only devices, hole-only devices. And when we study the flow through the LUMO level and stop the flow from the HOMO level, this is called the electron-only devices. Normally, in all the cases of polymer, if you want to study calculate the mobility of the polymer after the spin coating, you can go for a hole-only device, because these all are polymers are the p-type materials. And if you want to the acceptors, study the mobility and trap density in the acceptor, you will prefer the electron-only devices. And from here, when we fabricate the devices, the structure is ITO. There is an organic layer which is a sandwich in between the gold and ITO. And we will get a characteristics like this. This is nothing but this is the representation of your JB characteristics in the log scale. And from here, this characteristics, simple JB characteristics, you can see that in this there are different. There is a different shape of your curve. In the starting, we have divided into three regions: A region, B region, and C region. The A region is called the ohmic region, and B region is called the trap limit region, and this is C is called a trap free region. And suppose in the A region, the slope is near about 1. And in the B region, when the slope is more than 2, we call that as a trap limited. And when the slope is near to 2 or exactly 2, that is called the trap-free SCLC region. In the ohmic region, the conduction is basically governed by the thermally generated charge carrier within the layer, because at that time the injection carrier density is very low, but when we increase the voltage, the injection carrier density start to increase inside the layer. But as we know, in the polymer layers, there is a lot of traps, the mobility is low, so they start to accumulate. And when they start to accumulate, they will oppose the further flow of injection carriers, and that is called the SCLC. They will form a space charge region, and this conduction mechanism is known as a space charge limited conduction, and these are affected with the help of traps. So we call this as a trap limited SCLC region. And we can easily calculate this voltage from this equation. This is called a transition from the ohmic to the time limited. And if we want to calculate the mobility within this, we can use this equation. And further we increase the voltage, one voltage comes, that is called a critical voltage. At the critical voltage, all the traps are filled, and that region is called, further region is called the trap-free SCLC region conduction. And with the help of this Child's law, we can easily calculate the value of the mobility, because J we know, V we know, D is the thickness of your layer. You can easily calculate the value of mu. And from this critical voltage, you can calculate the value of trap density. So you can see with the help of this single characterization, you can calculate so many parameters. You can calculate the voltage, transition voltage, trap densities, mobility, and critical voltage. And you can analyze that if you're using the different polymers, how their mobilities are affected, how the conduction mechanisms are changes. And I have studied this based on the PTV7, PCT-TBT, and the blend of PTV7, PCT-TBT. And you see, I have chosen a hole only device structure because the charge carrier is moving through the HOMO level in all the devices. And we have restricted the flow on the LUMO levels. And from these equations, I have calculated the value of critical voltage, trap densities, and the mobility. This ET, we can also able to calculate the trap energy levels from these equations. So these characterization, these value of calculation of the mobility and the value of calculation of the trap densities, these occur in the when you measure your characteristics in the dark. Suppose when you measure your characteristics in the light, in the presence of light, how you can investigate that and how you can calculate the value of exciton, we will learn further. Here you can see this is my device, highly efficient single junction. I have achieved efficiency near about 9.43, and we will learn that from these curve how we can calculate the value of exciton generation and exciton dissociation and charge collection probabilities. You see, this is the charge carrier dynamics in the photoactive layer. As I explained, when you shine a light, there is a generation of exciton, there is a dissociation of exciton, there is a recombination, and finally, sometimes you can also get a free charge carrier. This is a yellow line, and this is a moment of free charge carriers. And in order to calculate these things, you need your IV curves in a dark, IV curve in a light, because when you see this black color curve, there is a component of dark current inside that. When we subtract the current density, the dark current density from the light, we will get actual photon current densities. And when it crosses the x-axis, we will calculate a value of V naught, because with the help of V naught, we are able to calculate the V effective. When we subtract applied voltage to V naught, we will get an effective voltage. And when we plot this JPH corresponding to effective voltage, these curves look like this. You see, in the starting, they are proportional to each other. The JPH is proportional to the effective voltage, but the higher effective voltage is start to saturate. And from here, we will calculate the value of the J saturation, because the J saturation gives us the maximum charge generation. So this is the equation which is used to calculate the value of Gmax. Gmax is the maximum exciton generation. We know the value of JP saturation, as I explained in the previous slide. This is the value of J saturation, and from when you substitute the value of J saturation, you need a thickness of your active layer, and this is the elementary charge particle, elementary charge. When we substituting these all values, we are able to calculate the maximum exciton generation. So when you shine a light in your device, you have generate 1 into 10⁻28 per meter cube seconds excitons. but how much excitons are dissociated, because there is a recombination also, geminate recombination. In order to understand dissociation, we need a GPH at a short circuit condition. That short circuit condition is here. If you calculate the value of GPH at here, you can easily calculate the value of dissociation efficiency, because when you calculate this GP saturation you already have, when you divide this and multiply by 100, you can calculate that 94.56% from this 1 into 10 raised to the power 28 are dissociate. But after dissociation, there is also a recombination mechanism which we need to understand. And this recombination mechanism is a bimolecular recombination. So that from after dissociation, how much charges are you collected towards the electrode? You can also calculate this with the help of this equation. In this case, you need a GPH at the maximum power point. The maximum power point is somewhere here, because in order to that, you need to calculate, you need to find out your GM, VM maximum. When you multiply together, you will calculate a maximum power point somewhere here on the GPH line. And when you calculate the value of that, you just substitute the value of this that in this equation. Suppose in our case, that is in this case, that the value is 138.34 ampere per meter square. So when we substitute, it means that there is a 84.12% charges are collected towards their respective electrode, and the rest one are going under a bimolecular recombination or a non-geminate recombination. So you can see that from our IV characteristics, we can calculate very useful information like exciton generation, exciton dissociation efficiency, and charge collection efficiency. Further, if you want to study the recombination process, further if you want to study that recombination happen in your device, what type of the recombination is dominate in your device, you can simply plot your IV characteristics with respect to the light intensity, and from that characterizations, JV characterization, you can calculate the value of the GSE with respect to the light intensity. Here you can see in the normal case, we can measure all the IV characteristics or JV characteristics at the value of 100 milliwatt per centimeter square. But in order to understand the recombination, you need to measure these values at the low intensities also. So here you can see the variation of the GSE with respect to the light intensity, and this the dependence of the GSE on the light intensity follow this relation. And here the value of alpha is exponential factor, which will give you that your device is the one with the what type of recombination. If your value is very close to alpha, very close to 1, it will shows that in your device there is a very weak bimolecular recombination. So there is a very weak non-geminate recombination in your device. And when its value is away from your 1, that is goes down to the 1, then it shows that in your device the bimolecular recombination is a dominant. Further, we can also understand over VOC, the open circuit voltage with respect to the light intensity. And when we plot and we will calculate this will follow this relation, the dependence of VOC on the light follow this relation. And if we will calculate the value of N, and suppose if the value is close to N, that is, that indicates that your device is dominant with the bimolecular recombination. And if your value is near to the 2, that will shows that your device is dominant with the trap assisted or Shockley-Reed Hall recombination. And from these equation or from these characterization, you can calculate, you can evaluate that what type of recombination mechanism is dominant in your device. And from these equation, phase equation, and from these IV characteristics, we can easily understand, or we can easily comprehend that what type of mechanism is going in our device, what type of charge transport, what is the mobility of our device, what's the trap density in the devices, how much excitons are generated, how much excitons are dissociated, and how much excitons are collected towards, how much charge carriers are collected towards their respective electrodes. And from this equation, we can also calculate the recombination mechanism. So in the last slide, from this presentation, I hope you have you have learned a lot. And from this presentation, we have understand the working mechanism and the fabrication process. So the bulk heterojunction organic solar cell, we also understand that how we can calculate the charge carrier dynamics, like exciton generation, dissociation, type of recombination, charge transport by using the current density equation. If we understand these charge carrier dynamics, we can further improve the efficiency of our device. Suppose if you find that your device is suffer from this type of recombination, or your devices are not able to collect the charge carrier sufficiently, you can apply the additional interface layer like electron transport layer or a hole transport layer in order to improve your charge collections. So by using these carrier dynamic study, we can improve the device efficiency further. Thank you for your attention, and thank you to the organizer of this conference. Thank you very much.